All right. Good morning. So we'll start with making a short mandala offering and then correcting a motivation with refuge and bodhicitta. Sashi puki jushi meto tamrirangshi nide yen pade sangye shindu mikte owa irokunamda shinla choparashoidam guru ranamandala kaniyatayami Sanji chodam tsoki chonam la chanchu bardu dami kyapsuchi dagi chushi gibe tsonangi dola benshi sangi ruparasho Sanji chodam tsoki chonam la chanchu bardu dami kyapsuchi dagi chushi gibe tsonangi dola benshi sangi ruparasho Sanji chodam tsogi chonam la chanchu bardu dani kyapsuchi dagi chushi gibe tonangi rola penchi sanji ruparasho Kanki tuzi nizone tawa tamche pambi chere tambi chun tenze kodum kela changse lo Good morning everyone. So ta kanzi nganzo ta lojong nimi ser ton ta sungu yores ta lojong nimi ser ta zo de pige ta nam gi nganzo shede yage sanji chomden de chu nimbo de tawa den jong de choba chami basati an di ni nane ta zo choba chami bige lam ten tang rumba di ta lojong nimi ser nonole ya ta sewu shuchi During this set of teachings, we've been looking at mind training like the rays of the sun. Now, this text of mind training encapsulates the essence of the Buddhist teachings. The essence of the Buddhist teachings can come down to two aspects. There is the aspect of the philosophical view of dependent origination and the practice of non-harmfulness. So looking at the main thing that we take up in a practice, the main thing that we do is develop a behavior, a practice in which we abstain from harming others. And the way to do that is clearly explained here in this text of mind training.
Ani chobas la on ta lu nga yisum ta choba pigi ani chome basadi kanji ani pi shen la ya chi manne ba samaimba ani chi ani shen la ya pen tongeng gi choba di ani zu kolong la ya ra le de ba chi ro samlu cheso la ya ra le de ba chi dindi chi sung do as ra.
So this practice of non-harmfulness depends upon your motivation. And as such, because it depends upon your motivation, it's not simply abstaining from harming others. It's also having the intention to be of benefit to others, wanting to be of benefit to others. And in order to do that, we need to take care of the way that we think.
Ninji dan chanjugu semsadi, ra ninji da chanjugu semsadi, 티렌도스 더 닌지 실샤니 아니 비기 다 전주 고모태번딩로 어딘지 질이야 아니 that's maybe 람기 시덴 쪼디 and 텔레야 자니 송두스.
So we developed the motivation, and in terms of this set of teaching, the motivation that we carry is based on, first of all, compassion. And based on compassion, we develop the wish to attain the state of enlightenment so that will be of benefit to other living beings. And for that end, we abstain from harming others. We develop a practice of non-harmfulness, which is the main subject matter of this manual that we're studying at the moment, mind training like the rays of the sun.
The kechimbu imbadi ro tadi kecheshu imbadi the pena kadzin gyawarumchigi in tevengi ta kyasar mamala kachu nandi chigjini charanzos ani senyo gires kashi semen gyawarumchigi ta ani nganzu kecheshu ta choden tsigores choden tsidi nganzu lu choden da sem choden ni ro ni yungu yobada pese ores ta sem choden zodi semba koyang bochia sem gyachim gyakedi sem choding ta ani zores dindi song sera.
His Holiness the Dalai Lama gave teaching yesterday that were broadcasted online. It is likely that some of you have watched the teachings. The teachings were requested by a group of Taiwanese, and His Holiness gave advice to both monastics and lay people. And it says that normally when we look at our physical health, or in general, our health and well-being, we can address that on two levels. There is physical health and well-being, but there's also mental health and well-being. Mentally, when we cultivate mental health and well-being, what we want to develop is a mind that is relaxed, that is at ease, that is vast and spacious.
Deni konzu miji ki theoti songsra theoti dige ta tendu dan tumbige ani chuji ta kandas chego gres re the theopi dizore theoti songsra.
And during the context of these teachings, there was also some time for questions and answers. And someone was asking, how then do we practice this Dhamma in a way that accords with the current times? How do we make it contemporary? That was the gist of one of those questions.
Anjawaram jigda tendu cheda naru chesini chelaya nisike yomares. Inayanta zudi pigi ani chamninji chanchu semda ani tombanin tobe ki lolaya ani lojong chedita chu yakshud teres.
So then in addressing that question, His Holiness says that he doesn't think that you can make the division into modern Dhamma and ancient Dhamma, the modern religion or ancient religion. Rather than thinking about it like that, he said that he thinks that if your practice is going to be based on the development of loving kindness and compassion and bodhicitta, you'll be going in the right direction in terms of your practice. So rather than thinking that how do I make it modern, just stick with that, loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta.
Di ta mangzog chedu sungyenza an teleyaji pi trawa chegoya skiyo mare ane chegoya skiyo mare suzu pi chutsorang namaya deche ani suzu gi pi ta chik penju gi ani lega chegoya tu che yinaya semlaya ninji da chamba dan chanju sem ani pi ta ani onyu to be sharala soba gomna ti digidos pi 인지민이 비 남다 치발이야 비 아니 치소다 카타진 데야딜이야 아니 고바스킨 토고문도스 딘디 송송스.
So in looking at what His Holiness said yesterday, he said that really when you think of how can you develop a good practice, a pure practice, it's not that, and he gave this advice to the general public, he said that you don't need to become a monk, or you don't need to become a nun in order to do that. You can stay in society, and when you stay in society, there are certain things that you need to do. So in order to earn your livelihood, you go to work. But still, as you do all those things that you do in everyday society, you still maintain your cultivation of loving kindness and compassion. bodhicitta. You meditate on emptiness and so forth. And if you do all of that, you don't have to set yourself apart from society. It's not that you need to leave society and do something else. You can do that and have a pure Dharma practice.
딘디기다 추 아니 추 캐버트 파워스나만도 딘디기 추줄 상보 사모티 아니 다수 제토그리슬람디 당안주 비 로리tuk 치비기다 아니 미텔레야 케월렘비기 미남기 다 제나 제토그 여러스 로 제토그 앉았다 아니 미텐디 아니 짜침부 임바디 미텐디 짜침부 임바디 다진 조주삼이 류덴스데디 짜침부 임바디 아니 추 디톤다 루고도스라.
And that being the case, you might wonder, who has the ability to practice such a special Dharma, a unique practice? Who can do that? Well, human beings can do that. Looking at the 6 realms of existence, human beings are part of the 6 realms of existence. And once we have taken a birth, having a body such as this, which has freedoms and richnesses, it means that we can put it into practice.
Diri diza da chu ditoni da pigi ten de zachimbo imbo dugoenza da rangi ludendi ani chik ani yakbuchi chada macha sedi ani chu chi tuk matula ya ro ani tiredos ro tadi ludi zachimbo luden layadi kewang hammi namso ani chu chi bi debu imba 마음바 멘트네 류덴 상부직 랭거나 아니 깨워들어야 아니 최고돌아야 배바 전부 제거해야지 그디고 아니 균제긴 저당직이라도 도와서라.
So we regard this body to be a basis, a good basis, a really precious working basis. So if you wonder, how then do I determine whether I have a good body or not a good body or a bad one? Well, from a Buddhist perspective, the question is, can you use your body for the practice of Dharma? If you can use it for the practice of Dharma, it means that regardless of what your physical situation is, it is a good working basis. It is a good body. So this body that we have now that have freedoms and richnesses, 8 freedoms and 10 richnesses, is a result of causes that we have cultivated in previous lives. And likewise, if we wish to have a similar working basis so that we can put to use in the practice of Dharma in future lifetimes, what we need to do is to make sure that in this lifetime we create causes for being able to do that again in the future. And this is what we do in our Dharma practice. We create causes that result in positive states in the future, so that once again we'll be able to continue with our practice.
Tere denza karsuwarda chiza da suzuki chudi chetukuyona ane ludendi pemasewa kejimbu chasares dara ludendi tsachimbu shuchik ane tor murawachik tor ane torna mandiwachik ro da chu chetuku mebayna 추지 투매 봐이나 아니 로싱 루다 다 찍바 도지로스라 추지 투매나 아니 되자세당 아기 때문에 소버디 토니 자와치야디 아니 로싱 참말로 찍규 비길이야 찍 아니 고 요로스라 디지디기 믹스기 아니 수수 루덴디 아니 짜침부직 다 차마소스라 찍바 차소스.
And since we can put the Dharma into practice on the basis of this working basis, this body, it becomes to us so precious, and as such, it would not be right to discard it, in a sense that to damage this opportunity and cast it aside. It wouldn't be right at all. But if you do not use it for the practice of Dharma, if you cannot use it for the practice of Dharma, then what difference would there be between this body and the bodies of other living beings within the 6 realms of existence, particularly when we think of those occasions in which a mind is governed by anger and attachment, jealousy, pride, ignorance, and so forth. Other living beings also have those states of mind. So if we do not use this body that we have now to practice the Dharma in order to make sure that we are no longer governed by such disturbing emotions, what difference would there be between us and other living beings?
Teresha dinza kanji ani ta susu gyugi pigi deja shedan temusumla ya deja shedan temusum gutsubi ta chik nyumum biri tigidele ya tes chikpa ani ngon ya machaya ki samlu chitang tugu yobayna ani luden di tyanda demba chikres metse di tyanda demba chagores ro ta dela ya ani kanya chikpi gyodo jitam mutua samase chik ya 페리아기 조르질이야 아니 슈데기 여바나 다 직바레스 로 아니 로시한다 다 직바레스.
So we have this special human body that we have attained. So we want to use that in order to bring down our anger, attachment, ignorance, and so forth. We want to reduce them. In that sense, you can say that we want to come down on them and reduce and suppress them or reduce them. And if we can do that, it means that the body that we have now in this life serves a particular purpose. It has a meaning. Our life has a meaning. Whereas if we cannot really affect that change, if our mind does not change, if we cannot reduce our anger, attachment, or ignorance, and even in some situations we compound them, they become stronger and stronger, then what's so special about having a body such as that? In that sense, you can say that it would be just like having any other physical body in the 6 realms of existence.
어디에 디자 당한줄 루덴디 피기기 딱 인종 찬스 양답이 따왔음 시험원디 아니 딱 인종 시험원디 코알야 이번 종고레스 코알라 이번 종사기 지조디 피기 딱 두den기 루디 동아 그랑신바 아니 텔야지 아니 교와다 아니 딘디기 톤다 아니 코알레 도톱 제고르스데 지금 거라서 아주 초직니 루덴드 동아이란신바 루드 동아이란신바 루덴스라고 말다 루디 동아이란신바 돌고에 직순 거레스 초직니 루덴디 짜침보인바 아니 베 로션 캐버드 파워 임바 직순 거레스 더 디니기 인제디 당간절지 고도스로.
We use the body that we have in order to develop the 3 principal aspects of the path. We use it to develop the determination to live cyclic existence, for the development of bodhicitta, and for developing the correct philosophical view. So we begin with renunciation, the wish or the determination to live cyclic existence. So we do that in recognizing that the nature of the body is suffering. The body is within the nature of suffering. And as such, we develop the wish to overcome it and live that state in which our nature or the nature of the body is suffering. But still, at the same time, we also come to appreciate the preciousness of having a body such as this. So we need to make that clear distinction, or that, we can keep that word. We can make that clear distinction between saying that on one hand, this body is in the nature of suffering. On the other hand, we still want to keep it in that it is a precious human body with freedoms and richnesses. So Geshe is wondering if you guys had a similar doubt, whether you had a doubt with respect to, on one hand, saying that this body is in the nature of suffering, we want to live it. But still, on the other hand, we say that it is a precious human body. Have you had any doubts or qualms with respect to it?
Yeah, that the words kanzana manzu lug ranshin xiaondi lug nelu xiaondi ani dunga ranshin bachik songoras lu dunga ranshin imba toni tipi ani torja sondechik ro ku ranshin dunga ranshin bichani gyu bigi nyumumbala teni chongmi chani ani torja imbachik songoras ti sondi lula mibigi pena ani temu doyare ani temu tangi tani kibita ani chagbala soba kondala soba di lugu ranshin karimba tonwal teni doguyores.
So from the viewpoint of the things that have contributed to us taking a rebirth in a body such as that, we can see that, first of all, from the viewpoint of the cause and conditions, it's not that those cause and conditions were pure. They were controlled by a process that was involved with anger, attachment, and so forth. And as such, the body that they have contributed to is not a body that is completely pure and pristine and so forth. So from that perspective, we regard the body as something that we wish to overcome or to discard. I'm just wondering, it seems that there is the camera is a bit hazy on the right hand side. Could you check for a second the lens and see if there is something that is kind of dirty on the lens, if it needs to be cleaned? Has it started like that from the beginning, or is it something that all of a sudden happened? All right. Hmm. Can you make me more beautiful? I have some food stains here. Can you? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, maybe it's inside the lens. Anyway, thank you. Yeah. All right. I guess I'm becoming hazy and non-descriptive.
Ngemaranga ngemangazala peni mekashi negorlesra pawamani putin detection. Unkonzo palord ngazal nimakashi de unkonzo palord ditini pawani tis gengodojere ngazo nyamto parskyagosa ani ngazo chlod la rurutan parjemba am pawadi parjendela kuch par yakbush kyaro chelas amadi yomarsa ngazo yakbu mevas parkanda yakje tegors.
Geshe, when Geshe was living still in India, there was one day family in Tibetan that came out of Tibet and were going in India on pilgrimage. He visited South India instead with Geshe for some time, and just before they left, they stayed with him down south at Sarah Monastery for a few days. So just before they left, the father in the family wanted to take last photo with everyone. So he arranged everyone outside, and he asked for the photo to be a really good photo. He said, just make sure that you take a good photo. And his wife looked at him and said, well, to have a good photo, you need to also look nice. We need to look nice. We don't have anything that looks nice. So, give up any expectation for good photos.
Camera
Yeah. Anyway, so we might try to clean the camera, but kind of looking at what the camera is capturing, it's not that great anyway.
Dirita chokchigni ani mi ludentelaya mi luden dik tobgi pigi ta mixek namjuk sherab trun tuge joras ro di chani luden tsachimba ro luden tsachimba ta lu khorang ransing gi dunga ransing imba nimbudi ko loga chego das ro luden tsachimba di ani 통유 tobgi di 통유 tobgi tsachimbu 배주 지혜로 다 배주 가르치고 있으라디 비기기 로게게 투야 남죽 시럽 준 투야디 아니 류덴 디톱지 연구연자 아니 류자 청부인바 디안 통고야 류그 란시 동학 란시 인바 디안 통고야 어디 차가도 왔어요.
Anyway, the point here is that we want to use the body in order to develop our wisdom, to develop our intelligence. And as such, on one hand, we do look at the nature of the body and recognize that the body is in the nature of suffering, and still we hold it to be very precious in that it's a very good working basis. So we make such distinctions. And since we do regard the body as being very precious in that it is a very good working basis, we use it to make a mind broad-minded, to make the mind wise. But still, we can do so in recognizing that the nature of the body is still a nature of suffering.
Tinza da pigi kaso tarjin juju sami luden di da ani shinun tsa chimbo be ani odinri sungo anza tandang anza saje dia debut goni nyeba kawar samba seg debut di ta milu tsa mayimba ani milu bigi tarjin juju sami luden dilaya ngon zeng yoba di da sewures ro.
And that being the case, we're going to go back to the text and pick up from the point that we left off in the previous session. So we've been looking at a topic in the text, mind training like the rays of the sun, that explains the way that we, first of all, prepare the mind in using preliminary practices. And one of them is the cultivation or the meditation on a precious human body with freedoms and richnesses, that we have 8 freedoms and 8 richnesses. And we're now going to look at a section that explains how difficult it is to attain such a result or such a body when you look at the result, a precious human body with freedoms and richnesses. So let's see where we are in the text. I'll just sort out the font. All right. So, according to the difficulty of obtaining the causes. All right, according to the difficulty of obtaining the result, this is what we begin with today. 25, thank you. Yeah.
Odirda debi goni nyeba kawas sembanis sondi chir ngasunda
Nothing.
chir ngasong sum tawi rowan mangla tori gi ten thoban nyong khabar tori gi ten la mukhom ba geda tewi ten tewi ge nyong khabar thu tanjur thobni dambi chula loka chogba nimu karma chamdu shibar chela 대달 된 치시 니가베 단조rum부 치 토비 튼들 님볼 랜도 고토마니 게고라 세지 어디라.
Let's read through the first passage. It says, in general, the beings in the 3 rebirths are many, but those with high status are few. Amongst those with high status in particular, it is rare to find those who are free from the 8 states without leisure. Moreover, even amongst those who have found freedom and opportunity, those who are inclined towards the holy doctrine or the Dhamma, are numerous as stars in the daytime. Appreciate that the precious state of leisure and opportunity that we have found on this occasion is very meaningful and difficult to find. We must find the ways and means to generate the wish to extract its essence.
Tenzata reta ngaran sugiwa ngaran sug ludi tan dini sombigi ani debu gone shindu nyekabi gita luden sedi chagorwas ro kasna tawaji joju ro joju samita luden kanji ani tsedeleya 오늘 단위기 비기게 직 안 산지점 된 데기 추줄트만 메발야 배 로커 초니 다 여버디 슈즈 아니 짜침보러스.
All of a sudden it became clear, right? That's weird. Anyway, so we're looking at a section that explains how, according to the difficulty of obtaining the result, which is a precious human body with the 8 freedoms and 10 opportunities, we can come to appreciate the rarity of having such a body. So looking at this body, we do regard this body as a result, the result of causes that have been cultivated before. Now, this result, a body that is not just a body, not just a simple body, it has the 8 states of freedoms and 10 richnesses, the 10 opportunities. It is therefore a very rare circumstance. So from the point of view of rarity, we can appreciate the difficulty of finding such a body.
Piki tachi chu nye samgong sum che di chani ta nganzu ludi yakbu shu tsa chimbu shu ji chagor ma do chitang gi chani sheba na chu chi tu me ba na ani ka ko ya nganzu ludi nyokta sa shu ro khala kharsana ani mantre ba shu yungoras khala chidu ta pigile ya khala soyal sobata tsu ani mambu shu tang go ya di ko lüdele yan çoğu mebayınca ro naça yunguyanca dijin chigoras ani dolo dramada köngoya diye ko lüdi pigi mi lüdi ko ani bu mejo mara manyayınca ko kolaya lega mamu şuj dosro tele pigi ani ji shina gi ridala soba kangi gi pigi ani tomla soba didi kar sebayna ya satu çoğu dosro lugchani ani ji ko kan kandas gile dego chona korang lug ne su kebigi ani pola soba ko takta sonjob chituga chi lu pe tab debu lugchin do asra ta nganzula ti yo maras da ina ya ta song tansa de chu chi tu mutu chani sheban ta beditini ani namsa kor shor denza dindigi samlo di injimi gogo sar samgudus.
Particularly when we look at this body, which is so difficult to find, we recognize that we can use it for study, reflecting, and meditating on the meaning of the Dhamma. And as such, it makes this body to be such a good body, such a precious body that affords this opportunity to do so. So that if we don't use this body in order to study, reflect, to meditate, if we just use it for other purposes, then it's not going to be such a great or precious body. So looking at some things that we're using the body for, such as, for example, of course, we need to feed the body, we wear clothes and so forth. We spend quite a lot of time in buying food, preparing food and so forth. And there's so many different types of food that do not agree with us. So sometimes we go to a great extent in getting the ingredients and cooking a meal and so forth. And at the end, we still get sick. The food does not agree with us. We spend also a lot of time in covering the body. In that it's not that we have fur that can protect the body from cold and so forth. We need to clothe the body. It comes to us in being completely naked. So think about, for example, animals like birds and such, going around scavenging food. It seems that whatever they can get is suitable to them, and also naturally they have skin and fur that protect them. Our body is not like that. You can say that our body is more feeble. Our body is more fragile. But still, when you look at how the body is precious from a different perspective, in that this particular body, this physical support, can be put to use to study, reflection, and meditation, so that on that basis we can develop a mind, then you can see how precious this situation or opportunity is.
Teza dinang wala ya ten de la nyimbu len lu jang song de de ro teza tangan zu gi danju gi ten de nyimbu len go res len lu de khar res la na ta chu che de re ma do ro pigi nam ju gi sherab tu ya de ani chamba de nyinji la so bi gi ani lu tu ya de re ma do be gi chi khala tha ji bo sa ya an do lo ya bu khan ya pigi le ya chi ani lu le ya gen Dramada Tadela Soba Didi, Sodan Dramada Soda Di, then la Nyambulan Luchi, 자원이 최고 말했어.
So here it says, appreciating that the precious state of leisure and opportunity that we have found on this occasion is very meaningful and difficult to find. We must find the ways and means to generate the wish to extract its essence. So the way to extract its essence is to put it to use for the cultivation of loving kindness and compassion, bodhicitta, and so forth. And as such, we make the most, we extract the essence of this body. So extracting the essence does not entail learning how to cook really extensive and elaborate food or kind of amassing money, possessions, clothing, and so forth. Extracting the essence of this body means that we put it to use so that it supports the development of loving kindness and compassion.
디나다 마 디비시 거온디페 야부 거고다스라 임볼렌루 치 담비추 치고레스 담비추 두고데 에 데와데전 둥한문 디비처스.
The way that it is presented in the text is quite nice. It says, first of all, we must find the ways and means to generate the wish to extract its essence. Now, in a broad sense, you might wonder, extracting the essence, what is the meaning of extracting the essence? It means to practice the holy doctrine or the Buddha Dhamma. This is because we want happiness and dislike suffering. So when you look at the way that the sentence is structured in Tibetan language, it is structured as a syllogism, which means that we have a logical argument that is presented here. So if you present it in the form of a logical argument, it would be like that. Take the Dhamma. It is to be practiced because we want to be happy and we want to abstain from suffering.
제 도규 대와디 아니 두지기 탑디야 추 코널에 두고라스 문득이 동을세기 탑디야 추 코널 두고한자 간지 추 두고야 돼 차고레스라 추 두바이나 단주 그때는 힘볼련 버리 추 제마투바이나 아니 단주 그때인디 촐라레스 럼 디레도라.
And when such a logical statement, a syllogism, is presented, the Dhamma is to be practiced because we want to be happy and we seek no suffering, then the understanding that you get from that is that if you want to cultivate happiness, you do it independent upon the Dhamma. If you want to be liberated from suffering or abstain from suffering, that can be done depends upon the Dhamma. And therefore, in terms of extracting the essence of this body in this context, it's not about taking care of the body in terms of food and clothing and so forth. It is about using this body in order to dispel suffering and in order to accomplish happiness.
다드니 어느 추다 추치 고그레스 가서 대원두고요 말이 대원두고요레 동안두고요 말이 아니 디탑 추치 고그레스 이내양 딱 니치 투그레베스 니치 누그레베스 라바이너스 야차 야다마 계란 치 누그레스 간스는 계란에 치게 아니 기우신인도 난기게 피기 단주고 루딘 상보다 덴도스.
So this section says that we need to do it. We need to practice the Dhamma. We need to practice the Dhamma because we are looking for happiness. We want to abstain from suffering. But then the next question is, can I do it? Can I actually practice the Dhamma? So the answer to that is that it is possible because we have, first of all, the external condition. We have spiritual teachers that guide us. We also have internal conditions in terms of our freedoms and richnesses.
terda chur tuyagi chagin yakshta zodi tanjug ten sambada dengoya di memugo barawasra tanjug ten ta mulu yakbuch pigi yanlangan sangingi ani migi ludinjila ya gegoya di ani tangbochi niba di pigi ta ji chu ani ji pigi denbin nelu ngotungi ani ji teba chembu giwishinyi jidaya 태고원자 technical 계란은 상가도 왔어.
So this text is pointing it to us and saying that actually we need to look at our situation. The text says, look at your situation. First of all, when you see that you have the best conditions for practice in terms of freedoms and richnesses, recognize that you were born with a fully fledged body of a human being. That's the internal condition. But also you have the external condition in terms of having met a spiritual teacher that introduces you to reality, that can teach you or lead you along the path for discovering the way that things exist.
다 딘디 괜찮아요. 다 다다라 맞는 디그랑이 깨어 치만 넘스들 지나 안 다당한테서 고향 땅 비기 다 진도자 세단 때문에서 조마서 때때지 페이지 치고 세서지 제바이는 디마다스 깨어 치마 캐란 양게 깨원 디다오지 렌스야디 신는 깔카고레스.
Now you might say that I do understand that this body is precious, but still I can do it in my next lifetime. I don't have to do it now. In this lifetime, still, even if I haven't really exhausted all my negative states of mind or disturbing emotions, anger, attachment, and ignorance, still, I want to take it easy. I'll take it easy in this life and I'll work on that next lifetime. Here the text says that this is not the way that we should be thinking about it because it's so hard to find such a good working basis in the future. So you might be thinking that I want to take it easy and do it in the future, in future lifetimes. But in no way it's going to be easy to find such a good opportunity to do so in the future.
Terda andi di 균zen 두더라. 다 소소라니 아니 비 취진 손치니 아니 개와 치만 남수 드는 디그리 삼바 삼로디 참으론데 개와 치만 딘디기 단주 땡이바디 신두까비처.
So again, in working out with syllogism and positing those logical arguments and getting a head around what would be a suitable way of thinking for us, you might again take yourself as a subject, take I, take me. The thinking that I can do it in future lifetimes, I don't have to do it now, is not suitable because it is so hard to find such a good human rebirth with freedoms and richnesses again.
레다 개와 치말라야다 니가위 균젠데 치당한주 공두치 송슴바레스 이네 개와 치말라야 다기 조조zam이 류덴데 니가위 균젠 조디 안디 규드고 그러스 라디 규디 만탈라야 아니 메기주봉 그좀 시송 아니 지금은 주마메비 참제는 로고와인자 아니 간주기 샘들레 지 따와이나 아니 메기주봉 그좀 야부치 송고 도문 들어 아니 비기 추준 유시sab신 안에 망치야지 배시 개체 개주고 비기 아니 차단 유무 쳐라야 로데야지 마도비기 메기주봉 그좀 송송 돌아 이런 도문도 되지 때다 아니 개와치마 단전 딘디지 톱 두살에 말이 깔릭하고 예메디 다가랑 하고 그랬어.
It's so hard to find such a good human rebirth in the future to do it once again, because first of all, when we look at it from the viewpoint of the causes that are used in order to produce or in order to give rise to such a good body with freedoms and richnesses, we can see how hard it is for these causes to be created. So first of all, the first cause is to guard ethical discipline that abstains from the 10 non-virtues. How hard it is to guard pure ethical discipline that abstain from the 10 non-virtues. We then need to supplement that with the practice of the 6 perfections, such as generosity, and at the end to connect it up with making stainless aspirations. So then again, looking at the first cause, which is guarding pure ethical discipline that abstains from the 10 non-virtues, we can start to assess our ability to do that. So look at your own mind. Look at your own mind within the span of a passing day and assess how easy or how hard it is for you to abstain from non-virtues. Is it that you could say that predominantly the non-virtuous side takes over? Is it that mostly we're involved with non-virtuous state, or is it that mostly we're involved with virtuous states? Geshe reckons that once you make that assessment, you come to see how easy it is for us to be leaning towards the negative side, the non-virtuous side, and through that we can understand the difficulty in creating the causes that contribute to a good state of rebirth, a precious human body with freedoms and richnesses.
대다 비기다 어느 게와 치마스 든지 타르모 마찬다 당에 아니 직다제마 로제마 따버 딘디질야지 다진 초르 다탄다다 아 콩고문도 삼삼도 지로 게와나 그냥 대제리 말다스 대제리 말 간스는 안주 치왕해 버리스 남칠랑이 버 싸우니 이어 말했어.
So then we might think that, yeah, I understand that it's hard to find such a good human rebirth in the future. So I have to do something about it in this life. But rather than starting right from now, I can do it next month, or when I get the time next year, I'll be able to do that. But again, we ought not to think about it like that, because apart from the fact that death is certain, the time of death is uncertain. Since the time of death is uncertain, we ought not to think that I can do it later on, that I'll do it next month or next year.
어디를 더 지디다 다 가두 치고 그랬어야지. 그래. 다 가두 치고 그랬으나 다다 치고 그랬어. 다다랑 치고 그랬어야 디레도 왔어.
So what we need to think about it is that I'll do it now. Not later, but I'll start right from now.
다다 간다 치가 봐. 계란 콩문다. 계란들 취식도 계란들 끼규 치도 교대를 비기 아니 지 로종 연구도 다 취치 단다 간다 치기 있으라바나. 단다 간 쳐버디. 단다 취시에 대한 취수도야지. 단다 비규리에 대한 취수도야지. 단다 녀에 대한 취수도야지. 다 안 취치버리. 다다랑 취치버리스로. 다디 다다 수술 내가 치대야디 비기 취다 멘트 바지 차바나. 아니 다 되니 깔가고 샤송스로.
Well, so how do we do that? Well, whatever we're doing at the moment, at this very moment, we can turn that to be Dhamma. If we're speaking, we can turn that to be a Dhamma. If I translate, I can turn that to be Dhamma. If we listen to teachings, the listening to teachings can transform to become Dhamma. So whatever you do, it's not that you have to then completely set it aside and necessarily do something else. You can turn the very activities that you do on a day-to-day basis, turn them also to Dhamma involvement, to Dhamma practices. This is how we do it right from now.
제고 릉하기 비게 릉하기 쩌버 간다지 라야 네베 까비 임바이냐 아니 취지 두고 그랬더라 태부 침비기 취어데 디나니 아니 야스 찬주 셈비기 쩌버 생이디 찍제디 깔 가고 쇼지 이네 찍제디 빼 아니 가두이나 아니 취어데 줍창이 취지 그래도서라 다당 안도 비기라야 아니 다당 니쿠데요 바이나 취지 쪽으로 다다 칼라사 되고요 바이나 취지 쪽으로 타나 다다 산존을 되어 바이나야 취지 쪽으로 다스러.
So we can do it right now. So then when you look at that, we can, for example, right now practice the Bodhisattva's conduct, the Bodhisattva practice. But then when you look at the Bodhisattva's practice, on one hand, you can say that it's so difficult to put it into practice. But you can still look at it from a different perspective and see how actually when you look at the things that Bodhisattvas do, the way that they practice, it's not that hard. I can do it right now. I can do it, for example, if I go to sleep now, I can put it into practice. When I eat, I can put it into practice. Even when I go to the loo, I can use it for practice.
저 디나 용어에 가서나 대단히 볼렘번 남기 나네 그냥 찬주기 생을 묻질라 공부치바 니 랍촉조 담보 냠도 삼니 찬주sem비 찬주sem중 훈주 양라든 교 차오스.
Let's read through what this text is saying. It says, this is because of one happiness in this like suffering. We've read through that. If any doubt arises about our ability to practice the Dhamma, reflect on such external conditions as the presence of spiritual friends of the great vehicle and the opportunities for meeting them, and the internal condition of possessing this free and fortunate body as a basis. So Geshe spoke about that. Then he also spoke of, if you think of postponing your practice until future lives, remember that it is hard to find such leisure and opportunity again. If you think of putting off your practice for some months or years, this is also mistaken, because although death is assured, its time is uncertain. Among the way of taking the essence, familiarizing yourself with the awakening mind, with bodhicitta, is the principal and most excellent practice. And to do that, you should engage in the preliminaries for training in the awakening mind. So if you think that, therefore, I need to take the essence, to extract the essence of this life, starting right from now, the best way to do that would be to cultivate bodhicitta. And for that end, we here look at the preliminary practices for training in bodhicitta.
어디래다 디남기난다 쭉쭈디 랍쭈 담바디 찬죽 셈 고메들이 송디 다 찬죽 셈 고메디 찬죽 셈 고메디 비 카네케지 셰고 말에 아니 류기 비기지 아니 남규 셈바 땡고요 말에 셈라야 섬야 다가라레스 로 셈라 고메 디치디기 셈라 고메디 차랑기 아니 곰디 테바이나 니쿠비 까블라이나 용구요레스 아니 비기기다 지 칼라사비 깔라야 단지 쉬바나지 지금 산주는 대비가 왜 있느냐 아니 심진 탐지 동화가 내서 대대 전에 제모를 냠바디 샘라 삼니 아니 찹사 마바드니 차고 말하서라
So the best way, it says here, to extract the essence is to train in bodhicitta, to develop bodhicitta. And as such, to train in bodhicitta, it's not that then you need to start saying things, saying some recitations. It's not that with your body you need to do things which are quite odd or quite strange. To train in bodhicitta is to take up mental training. In your mind, you cultivate the awakening mind, you cultivate bodhicitta. And as such, you can combine that with all the other activities that you do throughout the day. Even, and if you, when you have meditated on bodhicitta for a certain extent of time, you become so familiar with bodhicitta, even in your sleep, you can continue with cultivating bodhicitta. When you eat, you can still cultivate bodhicitta. And even when you go to the loo, you can still think, may all sentient beings be happy. Geshe reckons that even if when you're in the loo, if you think, may all sentient beings be happy, it's not going to cause you to soil yourself. Well, try it out.
최대 시행에도 저기 비 잡진 디베 아니 교부 인베 아니 슈기하는 잡진 치아디 류 최대는 누구르세도 왔어. 네. 슈기하는 교부 잡진 치아디 류 최대는 누구르세가 암지 가시지 디 라브뇨여로.
배 암치야는.
암지 센데딘디. 야베 개범만 암지 센데딘디 라브뇨.
아니?
네, 대자 콜rel레치니 비 찹산드는 렐레친 대바이나 코랑싱마 아니 찹산 파외줘라 디 아니 룰레 팽거스 디 앵컬이야 뒤즈디 아니 겨울온지 디 송도 왔어 디 야자자다만 디 남겨서레스로.
So rather than being too rushed when you go to the loo, kind of putting a lot of effort into what you need to do in your loo, if you just take it easy, you know, Geshe had that actually kind of putting too much effort into it, it might be not good for your physical well-being. So just take it easy, you know, take it easy. Think of bodhicitta, think of the welfare of all sentient beings. Even his honest says that kind of you can become really at ease when you take the time to cultivate the welfare of living beings. 네, 그런데 산주라는데 아고 domta doa. 그래서 되게 건설하는데 나 등이 그래서 건설 가사래서.
야, 무슨데 어디래지다? 되니 니바다 센드린도 메데바. 처음 다보선 비출라. 아니 처음 마섬시 마틴 비니밍드 치 폰드 탐지기 자와집이 출산바당. 처음 다보섬시 공부집이 표현이 So
that brings us to the next topic in this text, which is the cultivation of the thought of death and impermanence. So how to think about the brevity of this life, death and impermanence. So we should think about how unmindful of death is the main cause of the whole heap of mistaken performance, mistakes performed in this and future lives, and how familiarity with death's impermanence is advantageous. It's a means for achieving everything that is excellent in this and future lives. So here we have three main points that we think of in relation to death and impermanence. We first of all think that death is certain, that the time of death is uncertain. That's the second point. And the third is that at the time of death, nothing will be of help apart from the Dharma.
데르다 처음 다와 템비 로디 만주도 섬다운디 비기지 아니 치고를 세도다 어찌 치고 시원디 데스 많이 받어 까까라야 용구여서 디다디 고 아니 가서 만주 지단기 치와디 되금에 봐인자 다지 아니 치와스 라바이나야 아니 지 샘라야 마테바딘디 고 마콤베왕기 용구여서 마도 오늘 다니기 산지 좀 된디기 최디 저당 거라 뭐여 내출 피기 유기 뭐여 내출단 톰바직 사운드 땅 투바이나 최레샤스 로 유기 뭐여 내출단 톰바직 사마 투바이나 되니 로디 로신줄로식 되니 추마인기 잡아지야기 아니 겐직 차르고도 왔으라.
So we think of the certainty of death, and when we start to think about it, how death is certain, it's inevitable, it might be that a sense of discomfort will creep into our heart, that it will make us uncomfortable with it. There'll be some unpleasantness that will creep in. So after all of us have the thought that may I not die. We wish to stay alive, to not die. And this discussion about death and the certainty of death could create a sense of discomfort in our mind. But when we say what we know, what we do with our Dharma engagement, what we want to do is to make sure that our way of thinking is in line with reality. If our way of thinking is in line with the reality of the object, the way that objects exist, it means that we're practicing the Dharma. Whereas if our way of thinking is not in line with reality, does not accord with reality, it is non-Dharma. So this discussion about death might cause us a bit of discomfort or displeasure. But still, when we think of the certainty of death and how it is in line with reality, this type of contemplation is Dharma.
Je bena nganzuge 처음다와 삼사기 시조디 아니 폰소고 추딘데 아니 비기게 깨지는 지비 다지 그런 거 란신디 로 아니 어디서 상원디 잠발라 그거다 가서다 내루도 통온디 아니 텔라 미비게 아니 내루 텔라야 신줄로도 슈비게 마리바도 도고레스 내루 텔라야 몬치니 신줄로도 따와 비기게 지 아니 착당라 소바디야 도고레스로 그래도 그 유그 내루도 통온디 내루 텔라야 아니 신줄로도 슈딩이 로디기디 자마차로야 디고 다 춘이스 람나 랍셔고도스 아니 베기 탈투온디기 최남기 내루 대코나니 있어야 내루 탈투버디 무신비 로들이야 아니 최고 탈투버디 타바도 탐지기미 고모토야 탈투버디 내루 대코나니 아니 라트비 로딘 로야디 최디 우연내주던 톰바지 이마디 디니 땡고요라서
So then when we think of being in line with reality, we begin with recognizing the way that the aggregates, the body and so forth exist, what their mode of existence is. And we can see that the mode of existence of the body, the aggregates and such, is impermanence, in that they change from moment to moment. They disintegrate from moment to moment, which means that we come to see their reality, the way that they are. And through that, we overcome the mistakes of ignorance. Our ignorance misconceive of such realities. Our ignorance is in error. So if we then think of the reality of the body, the aggregates, and see their nature of disintegration, we will use that in order to overcome the misconceptions of ignorance. And through that, we'll then also overcome anger, attachment, and so forth. Which means that when we start to think of the reality of the body, the way that the body exists and so forth, we come to recognize the mistakes that our own ignorance portray. We will naturally come to put a stop to our own ignorance when we start to think of reality. And at the end, we will use that in order to generate the final an understanding of the final reality, the most ultimate level of reality. And that will be the ultimate Dharma. So this understanding of ultimate reality will come through making sure that a mind is thinking in a way that accords with reality, that accords with the way that things exist.
데려다 레소 탐지 리뷰고 지구를 세야 돼야지 나 지구 로단디 디지렌도스 베나 아니 최고 비 타투바디 아니 타르 공반티시 데토시 탑 타투바디 동반이 도비 셔럽 네룩 동반이 네룩 타투바 동반이 도발이야 아니 비기기 드브제 텐종 리베토니 용고도스 다 텐종 타라 망부시온디 규견을 때는 좀 베기때 베는 두시기 텐데 돌아 상당한디 아니 대화도 동하고 존당 그런바디 찬상 아니 디 차네 비 아니 계지기지 규로 메다빙 안주 디 아니 텐종기 아니 리비기 다지 내가 조지 차거도서 텐종기 난게 내가 조지 다 두수 때라 변네 텐종기 남샤디 야부시온디 텐종 텔 때네 아니 최 탐지 비기 다 또베 딱섬 세디 힘바디 리버티 두고요레스 텐자 간지 처음부터 왔으면 로디 레소 탐지 고치고 힘바디 아니 야시 야당 바르스로
So again, this section says we should think about how being unmindful of death is the main cause of the whole heap of mistakes. Can you hear me, by the way? Are the speakers working well? All right. So it is the main cause of the whole heap of mistakes performing this and future lives, and how familiarity with death and impermanence is advantageous. The sole means for achieving everything excellent in this and future lives. So when we think of achieving everything excellent in this and future lives, that perfect thing that we can achieve is the state of liberation. We can pursue the state of liberation in this and future lifetimes, and that would be a perfect state that could be achieved. And the method for attaining the state of liberation is through developing wisdom, developing wisdom that realizes reality, that realizes emptiness. And the reasoning that we use in order to prove emptiness, to prove selflessness, is the reasoning of dependent arising. Now, dependent arising, dependent origination has different levels of subtleties. There are coarse level to dependent arising and subtle levels to dependent arisings. So with the subtle level of dependent arisings, which is difficult to understand, we first of all cultivate an understanding of the coarse levels of dependent arising. The coarsest level of dependent arising is the understanding that phenomena such as the body and so forth, they exist and depends upon cause and conditions. They come to be depending upon cause and conditions, and as such, they are impermanent. As they are impermanent, they change from moment to moment. They disintegrate from moment to moment. Such are the things that are impermanent. So then once you develop a good understanding of this point, you can use that to develop a greater or more deeper insight into dependent origination. Finally, you can use that, to understand how phenomena exist as being merely imputed in dependence upon others. And therefore, the ability to use this existence that we have now for the development of such familiarity with death is impermanence for us would be advantageous, because this is the means, the sole means for attaining everything excellent, liberation, either in this or in future lives.
There dandina chiwa matabar somebody hands that di chiwa matabar some said di pigi matabar nilu dobi lo zang mayimba ani chiwa la ya chak se joros chiwa la ya chak ba said o dil la goras ra.
Now here when we say that we meditate or we think of death and impermanence, it's not simply thinking that one day this body will die and will be separated from our body, possessions, relatives, and so forth. It's not simply about that. It also involves with developing a certain sense of fear. So it says the fear of being separated from your body, possessions, and relatives of this life to which you are attached, caused by thinking about death, is not the fear intended here, for that is the fear of one who has no understanding of the path.
Chiwa matabar samba hands sin di lu longju ni du sodan chakbi wangi tedan tarwa la chakba keba ni da pigi lojong la ya lam la ya ye majambi chiwa la chaklu yimbi dir te keba menos kam dir di sungu yo mares.
So again, there is a fear that is involved with thinking of death and impermanence. And this text here speaks first of all about the type of fear that we should not have. So this meditation is not for developing fear of being separated from your body, possessions, and relatives of this life to which you are attached, caused by thinking about death. This is not the fear intended here, for that is the fear of one who has no understanding of the path.
Takam de di masum gyunzen khares laundi di cheto yo maros pena kera ani di gi longjo da khate ro ya ni da kha matre ya gi tabshi siki yo maros tinza tabshi meba jigla ya phigi gi ani sem nang lo ya jigta so lang de ba na di gode yo maros kam di che yo mares.
So this type of fear that is involved with being separated from our body, possessions, relatives, and so forth, which is what happens upon death, fear from being separated from all the things that we're attached to. This is not the fear that we want to develop here, because there's nothing that can be done in order to avoid those states. Since upon death, there's nothing that we can do in order to avoid being separated from our body. There's nothing that we can do in order to avoid being separated from our possessions and relatives, since those things are inevitable. What use is of fear of separation from those things? This is not the type of fear that we want to develop.
Lo tuzo yongbi kabdula ya ani nganzo da yungor da le thangbo wala ya ko pi ani chapi wan sonza yungu yores da yong na ya tele ya chi nimbu den ya tabshi ji yoba na ani chika lamula ya ko ji ani lelo jin ro tu ya chi ro mulum ji ne gyab ya gi kokob ji ra ba na ani kewa chi mala ya denru ki ya gi ani jewa yoba inza ani ji da tele ya samdang ko gres ro kansin nganzo kieni chigoban jigdeng chunyi ani dune targoban jigdeng chunyi somainza o ditsu samtani drobaina ani ni do de katawi bigi mugubi dongati ro ani lu lonjo da katan do sambi gi ani goba mebi ani semdula sobadi nyor doyagi tabshi yores.
We do become unhappy, we do suffer because we are attached to our body, possessions, friends, relatives, and so forth. So of course, fear and unhappiness do arise. But there are ways that we can deal with them. There are antidotes that we can apply to them throughout our lives so that when a time of death comes, we can die with a mind that is more at ease, that is more relaxed. And when our mind is more at ease, it is more relaxed as we are approaching death, we can use the mind for making aspirations that will affect our next lifetime. So we can do that. We can, for example, take into consideration that whatever is born will necessarily die, that every meeting will end in separation. This is the nature of such impermanent phenomena. And as such, inevitably, there will come a day in which we'll be separated from our friends, from our relatives, from our body, from our possessions, and so forth. So we are certainly going to be separated from them, and there are things that we do in order to overcome the anguish that such separations can induce.
Wana kanyamna ani dacho metawa sam ba cho metawa le tagba sadi ani taglu khandare slawainas lenyin gi ongi nyin sam jarwa thamje chewale mandebe tela tagba cheja rishi ga ba minime wenjan jigde chimi thendro ma chonwa chewalan jigbar chates derda wenjan jigde chimi thendro ma chonwa chewalan jigbar chade te samne teda drumni chigar matawa charyobi cheros.
So we said that the fear attributed to attachment of being separated from our body possessions and friends is not the type of fear that is intended here. So you might be wondering, what then is the type of fear that we generate in this context? So the text says, what is this about? Everything that is born from a union of parents due to the force of actions and disturbing emotions or karma and afflictions is bound to die. And although you may fear, it cannot be avoided. Moreover, until we have accomplished the purpose of our future lives, we will continue to fear death. If you think about that and realize it at the time of death, you will have no fear.
Terda jigden chimi ten and chik da yabuji matu ni chiman drogu chombayana kewa chimalaya kanga shuji ra kewa chimas lavanda gyurumbu shuji keja chagonza ani gyurumbu shuji la ya kanga nalona dig ani pesa song sambi chi ra chibaji sambaji yobayana ani kewa chimi gi ten druya di yungures semnalaya ra ani sosugi kanu chinu kantuchudugi ani kewa chimi gi chedu ani luden delaya ani chava chetubayana ani chegalamodeleya ani gyoba mewachik ro gyoba mewaji yungures so kantuchudu chebainza da gyoba mewaji yungures di gogures ro di cheyores.
So then, not thinking of future lives or thinking that it's still far away in the future, we end up not doing much about making sure that we create conducive conditions for future rebirth. So when we start thinking of the certainty of death and so forth, we make sure that we do not postpone our preparation for later on to the point in which we will die and thinking that I should have made enough preparation for future lifetimes, but I haven't done so. So this thought of death and impermanence is designed in order to make sure that we do what we need to do in order to make sure that also in future lifetimes we encounter positive situations, so that when we die, when eventually we die without any sense of regret. Our mind is at ease. Our mind will be comfortable in thinking that we've done what we could have done in order to secure better states in future lifetimes. So this is what we need to do with a meditation on death and impermanence.
간징 안주기 아니 메다비 내주삼야 아니 비 동하비 내주삼야 비 존단로지 아니 다음에 봐세디 아니 된달라야 아니 사운드다니 아니 제버치야 아니 닌지 러섬저 탐제 비기 아니 대바다 동하면대바 찌규리 뭐 윤선진 탐제 대바되는 아니 탐제 동하데 딘지기 아니 사운드 가주 땅 투바이나 디레샤스로 메지디 메지기 님부로디.
His Holiness the Dalai Lama gave teaching yesterday, and he then recommended that we still think of the reality of impermanence, that we think about suffering, that we think about selflessness, and in thinking about selflessness, we want to use reasons and logic in order to analyze and investigate the view of selflessness. We recognize that all sentient beings are equal. They're the same in seeking happiness and wanting to avoid suffering. And we use that in order to think, Therefore, may all sentient beings be happy. May no sentient being suffer. These are the ways of thinking that we want to develop.
틀어졌다. 먼저 여러분지 송바 난신지 제투바이나 고 랍친레도 왔어. 여러분지 공부 시단디 템바 칠래야 공부 시신. 먼저 지금 머럽 듣자마인바 머럽는 머럽파 지금 애니 난추 균니야기 토라야 안 여러분지 투섬 쇼시거레스. 먼저 산지기 취 지다마 체온디니 아니 템바 진생고 온디 친 송샤바다 아니 간사 권생고 온디 송샤바 니 여버디 다 시부 쇼즈레스로 이는 여러분 지금 망치야디 개체슈디 템버 진생기 온드체니 산기마 송샤디 디츠 난가도스로.
In thinking of the way that His Holiness Dalai spoke about it, we can see how His Holiness is concerned about the availability of Dharma from here to the future for future generations, and as such is addressing such ways of thinking of impermanence, about death and impermanence, thinking of the welfare of sentient beings, recognizing the equality of all living beings in terms of seeking happiness and wanting to avoid suffering, recognizing all those different points, because in continuing to think about that in general with respect to the Dhamma, we will in some sense create those conditions for the Dhamma to remain for a long time. So there are ways of speaking about the Dhamma in general, and there are ways of speaking the Dhamma, teaching the Dhamma to specific individuals, to specific people. So here, rather than being too specific in His Holiness's teaching, Geshe reckons that when you look at what it says that it's speaking about it in general in order to make sure that when we sustain those general ways of thinking, we also make sure that the Dhamma still remains available for us here and for future generations to come.
테리당한서 간사 근생기 온드 제바나 간사 겔레 som다와나 소수 규기 아니 뉴무 독섬 다야 동아시야디 다 아니 동안 되게 반자 대초 차고라스 텔레밍니 피기 텔레밍니 아니 소수 피기 독섬 콘숨치 아니 피기 아니 바 아니 쿠심부질 바데니 드바냐는 치야디 간사 겐치 겔레야 겔 다치 조다 산지 공부 심자 탐지기 치도 미니 산지 공부 두거데네 내가 비 간사 겔레야 되대 봐지 그러 다 비기 소수 관심 받디 비기 찌조랑 그 돌아봐 민바 치신 파 샨듭시야디 아니 템바 진센래야 템바 찔래야 팬데지 된서 여러분지 까고 나신 들어봐이나 랑기 케페 마세 아니 템바 찔래야 심지 찔래야 참말라 팬데기 아니 In
terms of the attitude that you can take in your spiritual practice, you can either have a private aim or personal aim, in that you think that my goal is to attain the state of liberation. In order to do that, I need to eliminate my anger, attachment, and ignorance. In order to do so, I need to develop the wisdom of reality, the wisdom of selflessness. So in order to do that, then I need to rely upon seclusion, cultivate a meditation practice that on a personal level will make it possible for me to attain the state of liberation. So you take the very personal approach to your practice. Or you can take an approach of actually, in order to be able to be of service to others in general, to society, to the community and so forth, I will remain in my community and continue to teach and speak about ways of thinking such as death and impermanence and such. And it seems that when you look at His Holiness's activities, and rather than being concerned about his own personal individual well-being, is still continuing with speaking about the message of having to think about reality, death and impermanence and so forth. So Geshe reckons there is something to be learned, to be gained when you think of how His Holiness presents such material.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Anyway, let's do it here for now. May the Supreme Jewel Bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more and more. Due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. The wish-granting, wish-fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world, to the incomparably kind Tenzin Gyatso I beseech, may all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. Savior of the Snowland teachings and transmigratory beings, who makes extremely clear the path that is unification of emptiness and compassion. To the lotus holder Tenzin Gyatso I beseech, may all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. And finally, you uphold the subdued moral way, who serves and bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Manjunath's victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplish magnificent prayers honoring the three jewels. Savior of myself and others, your disciples, please live long. All right, thank you very much, peeps.